prepare for this kind of a season of layoffs? Samir Parekh of Naman HR with me on the show today. I'm speaking with Aditya Narayan Mishra of SAIL HR Services, and Anshuman Das of CareerNet joins me on the show. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us this evening on the India Development Debate. Samir, let me begin with your take. First off, the recent events, and it's seeming like a contagion that's spreading. You've had more and more companies being, reported every day to be considering layoffs, and these are the large ones. So will we see a cascading effect? Is this a reality which is going to hit India as well, or is this still largely limited to Silicon Valley?
I will say it's largely limited to Silicon Valley, and thanks, Tamanna, for inviting me on this show. I believe I would attribute this to or trace back this to the sector's overhiring, especially in last 2-3 years. Probably, from 2019 to 2021, there's all big tech companies, Amazon and Apple and Google, and all of them increased their headcount by nearly 80%. And I think that's probably is one of the key reasons that this kind of things might or would be seen. I don't think in India there is going to be a major impact, although we do see that in at tech sector and also some of these tech companies. But otherwise, yes, largely manufacturing economy in organized sector, and therefore I don't see very, very big challenge of layoff in the
impact in India. Nevertheless, all of these multinationals have, seen their share of impact in India. We're talking about the Amazon case today, where the Labor Ministry has also stepped in. Aditya, let me take this question to you. Do employees have these options? Because it's sort of unheard of as a rule in the private sector. And how does one prepare oneself, or how does one conduct oneself in this season of layoffs?
I think the Industrial Disputes Act that has been cited by this group of employees may not actually hold water, because that Industrial Disputes Act refers to the workmen, and the people who are getting impacted by this layoff are largely white-collar employees who are not really workmen. So that is one aspect that we need to be
is there no
aware
law?
of.
Sorry, just to quickly understand, is there no law, you're saying, that protects white-collar employees? I know it's referring to workmen, but isn't that a broad legal term that covers anyone who's employed?
No, it doesn't. The workman is a very different category which has been defined in the Act. So from a legal standpoint, this may not really stand the test of the law. So having said that, now the second question, how do people deal with it? We all know that they work in very uncertain times, volatile times. Their employers are operating in a high-risk, high-reward model. So the employees are also rewarded highly, and there is high risk. It's of course very unfortunate that people are facing this kind of a layoff situation, which kind of creates so much of disruption in one's personal life, finances, social standing, and so on. And of course, partially like Mr. Parekh said, that organizations overhired the numbers. They were over ambitious some time ago, and now the implication of it is unfortunately being borne by the employees. So the third aspect is that what can one do? One can, at this point of time, first of all, I think, accept the fact that this has happened, and nobody prepares for such an eventuality. However, it has happened, so, or it is likely to happen. So I think that's a big obstacle or big milestone in one's mind that one has to first achieve. Then one has to figure out that what are the possible opportunities that exist, and the people who are getting laid off are actually extremely talented people, and they are of course well paid. So one has to figure out that the option that one has, because there is a lot of supply right now when you
No, no,
lay
so
off a lot of people.
one minute.
So
I asked a
they are now
question. Aditya,
available
just let
for
me
the
get
labor market.
clarity on this. So, you said that the Workmen's Act does not cover white-collared employees, under which Amazon is being questioned. So what law covers white-collar employees?
I don't think there is any specific
Really?
law as such which is
okay.
extremely clear in
The
India,
definition.
which protects us.
Yeah.
Correct.
Anshuman, would you agree with that? That there is
I don't think the situation which the industry is facing is a new situation. It has been there, and I think as an industry, IT industry itself has seen at least 3-4 phases like this in the last 20 years. So, and to a degree, I think I will agree with Naman and my panel member in terms of there is really no hard-coded law. And the other thing, what government has normally done is to stay away from the white-collar jobs and the tech jobs and not to interfere. While the fine print can always come in picture and law can take its own course, but in spirit, the government has always let the companies operate because of the fact that these are reasonably high-paying jobs, and not that the empathy with the impacted sector is not there. But I think probably a lot of the people will not be earning for their daily bread or paying up their bills daily. I think there is a little bit of holding power which is there in this talent base. So to that degree, law has always ensured that they remain industry friendly. At the same time, also having the empathy for the employees also. You would have recently seen where one of the startups laid people in Kerala and the Kerala government intervened and the company went back holding out the offers again. So to that degree, I think the government does intervene. We also had a situation of when Satyam fallout happened, government did intervene and ensure that job losses do not happen. But I think to the larger degree, the government and industry have been working together to ensure that the ecosystem gets established.
Right.
While the fine print can always be interpreted in a manner which the government can tomorrow deem is right, essentially.
So that's, right, that's on the side of the law. But let's come back to the basics. And I agree that the law in India does need reform when it comes to labor. It cannot interfere in private enterprise. There may be situations like the current one where you will need to let go of people. The key question is, how does an employee in any sector right now prepare for this kind of a situation? Aditya, let me begin with those who are in the workplace. There may not be any impending layoff scenario that they know about. These things happen suddenly. Is it very important to assess your own contributions to the organization right now? Are you dispensable? If there was a list tomorrow, would you be at the top of it? How do you ensure you're not on the top of that list? Are these questions people should be asking themselves?
Yeah, I mean, these are like uncertain times, and the employees naturally would be extremely worried that whose turn is coming next, whether I am on that list or not. It may sort of this thought will cross one's mind, and the anxiety which builds up in one's mind obviously will impact the productivity. So, in my opinion, the leadership team has to play a very important role in communicating that why they are doing what they are doing and what is likely to come, which aspects of business they are letting go and why they are letting go, so that there is certain degree of calmness within the organization, which they must make an extra effort to bring it. Of course, employee, you can't assure an employee that nothing is going to happen, but you can provide certain degree of comfort to the employee and certain degree of sort of a stability in someone's mind. I think that's what an organization can do.
All right, Samir, your response to that.
I think. Yeah, go ahead.
No, just from the point of view, and Aditya talked about it from the point of view of the organization, of course, but also from the individual's point of view.
So I think, and before coming on to that, just on the legal side, because the workman definition under Industrial Disputes Act is very, very specific to that extent, and therefore the current Industrial Disputes Act 1947, which is probably the only labor legislation, is not in a way going to support any such claims of employees. Having said that, large number of layoffs, when they happen, they don't happen in the classical sense of layoffs, but you are encouraged to resign, take severance package, and those kind of things. Anyways, as far as the individual is concerned, it's very important for individual to look at his multi-skilling aspect, especially in the tech sector, which is very, very fast evolving. And we just saw the great resignation scenario a few months back and probably last year, where tech employees really asked for very, very high raise. Now, of course, along with those expectations, there is also expectation of continuous skill upgradation. And I think if one is continuously working on his own skill sets, I don't think there is a big challenge, because let me tell you, digital requirement is going to continue to be there, and there are many, many, many options available. In fact, the US data which we are putting, the total unemployment claims, which is about 1.5 million, is still the less than pre-pandemic claim of 1.7 million. So it is, although the layoffs have started, it is not to the extent that one really is looking at there are no employment opportunities.
Okay. So you're putting it in perspective. It's not all gloom and doom just because you're seeing these headlines. It's in certain sectors. Anshuman, in terms of how do you prepare as an individual, as an employee in these times? If you're in the tech sector, if you're in a sector which could be a little vulnerable, how do you assess your own strengths and weaknesses?
Sure. So I think, Tamanna, one has to really understand why any of these layoffs happen. And there are primarily driven for 3-4 reasons. One is obviously there may be a particular business unit which the company may not be focused on because the growth plans has scaled down. There could be essentially cost pressures which company may go through, and they may announce a blanket layoff of 10-15% across the organization. And the third could be there may be like poor performers which may be there, and companies say that it is a time to kind of clean up that thing. And there are companies which have done that. And probably I think what is right at this point in time, if you notice in the last 2 years, what has happened in the pandemic, most of the people have worked remotely. And a lot of companies have hired anywhere from 40% going up to as high as about 100% of their strength. And all of that has not very well assimilated because of the remote. While the hiring has happened and people have added, revenues has grown, but have the employees really grown? Have they really assimilated on the job essentially? The whole process of the osmosis learning which used to happen within the cubicles while being in the office has, I think, broken to a larger degree. And at that stage, when you are really got because of the flow of the market being there and you got a really hefty salary because the demand was very high, doesn't mean that you are really at that level. So there is one thing which is very important is people need to reassess themselves that are they really worthy of what they are getting paid for? Second, are they very well connected to the companies themselves or not? Are they very well connected to their teams or not, kind of a thing? Or they're still in that mode of, okay, we will still have a 50% pay hike happening and probably I need not to go to office and I can do remotely and things will happen for me. So I think there is a very important reassessment for people which is required. And I think it is unfortunate that 6 months or 3 months back, we were really talking about the great resignation, and within 3 months, things have been changing. So it has really not given time to the people to really assimilate and take a stock, so which is a little bit harsh, but that's the reality today. So I think my submission to most of the people would be, look, probably start working on basics, start working on as a team overall, start assimilating the things much more seriously, take your job much more seriously, ensure that you have those right connections within the team and the company. At least you get to know which are the projects which are important. And there is still a lot of pent-up demand which is still there. It is not about that the hiring is not happening. There are a lot of companies which are hiring which couldn't really hire earlier. So there will be those right opportunities will come out. Maybe you may not get that fancy salary which you were getting in, or maybe you may not get that very aggressive pay hikes which you were getting earlier. You may be required to take some salary cut or may come on a flat salary kind of a thing. But it's not that the world is end. And there is a lot of digital transformation which is yet to happen. So there's a lot of opportunities which are going to come by. So it may be a phase which will, I assume that is a 3 to 6 months phase which will pass through soon.
All right. Hopefully this is a phase that will pass. Hopefully it's not as big as the headlines make it sound. That's also an important perspective to keep in mind. Well, thank you so much for joining us in the debate. Now, moving on, let's do a quick